This table talk is made possible by Mental Health Matters, a newsletter from themighty.com. I'm Camara, and I'm joined by...
I'm Kat.
I'm Skye.
And today we are talking about health and humor. How do you get through? What is life sometimes, a tragedy or a comedy? It can be both, but we are going to uncover how we get through, how we find the humor, and what humor means to us within our health conditions, mental health and physical. There's so much to dive into here today. So, Kat, I would like to start with you. How do we feel like humor is used as a tool for your health?
Well, I feel like I got significantly more sarcastic the sicker I get. And I think for me, the biggest part is that I use humor as almost as a coping mechanism. It's also a way that I deflect conversation on deep topics when I'm feeling really, really terrible. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not sure, but I feel like being funny and making fun of my health and being witty about it allows me to not actually tell people how depressed I am. So there's that. What about you, Skye?
I also use it as a coping mechanism. It's always been a thing in my family too. Like, oh, this is probably not for the best, but we wouldn't necessarily fight. We would do more sarcastic quips, and then, we would make each other laugh, and that's how we would get through the stressful situations. Saying that out loud, not the healthiest thing. Sometimes it's easier to laugh than cry, and that's always been our family thing, is to cope with laughter. I feel like, though, there is a tricky balance between humor and being self-deprecating, which is a balance I am still working on.
I feel that. I feel like laughter can be the best medicine, but in moderation and how we use it as that tool. It's very easy to take that serious moment and then be like, oh, we've gone too far here. How do we make this more lighthearted? How do we laugh it off? But I'm curious how you both feel the healthy ways to advocate with your health through humor. What would be the specific avenues that you would go about that in the more positive ways?
So I think there's two things to remember when we talk about that is who is doing the humor. Is it the person going through it being funny about their own experiences, or is it someone else making fun or poking at someone's experiences? And I feel like that's a certain thing, right? Like if my partner is being funny about my health and about a migraine, I'm feeling fine. But if a stranger tells a joke about my anxiety, I'm probably not laughing as much. To me, that's kind of the balance that's a little hard to strike. I also think there's a stigmatization against people who are sick, whatever that sickness looks like, can't be funny or don't have joy or find nothing to laugh at. And I feel like humor is a really good way to show, hey, we're here, we can be fun, but we can also be anxious at the exact same time.
I completely agree, especially with I think having lived experience and making jokes is so different than, like you said, somebody kind of on the outside or somebody you don't know or don't have that close relationship with making jokes. It's fine that I say I'm built like Gumby, but if somebody else makes fun of my joints or anything else to do with my health conditions, it makes me feel some type of way, and it's not a good way.
Ooh, that makes me think I think the best comedians with their humor when they are laughing with themselves and not more so pushing anyone else down. I've seen comedians try to use humor when they don't understand the topic and push down on it, and it doesn't work. But when it's personal to you and you're able to kind of use it in a more impactful way to kind of relate to others, I think that can be a really positive momentum in that.
One thing I've done, and it's actually just been really helpful for me, is I love being funny when I go and see a doctor. I think it's really important to do it in a nuanced way because I never want them to think I'm making light of how I'm feeling. But I feel like it always helps to level the playing field a little bit. One time when I was new in my migraine experience and I learned that losing my vision temporarily was something that I went through. I didn't have vision in one eye and I went to the ER. And I think I said something along the lines, they were like, how are you feeling? And I was absolutely living my best life. Can't see, but that's okay. And I found that it really just, I don't know, it allowed them to relax. It allowed me to relax. Because I feel like the power dynamics in health and medical care, which we talk about a lot, humor just helps. I think it makes it a little bit more accessible and approachable.
I don't know why it's kind of that meme of oh, I had a great therapy session, or I won therapy, I made my therapist laugh. I totally try to do that. I always try to ham it up in the doctor's office, Because I think, again, like, if I don't do that, I'm going to be a nervous wreck. But there is also that flip side of like, well, if you're not taking this seriously, why should I? And so, once again, like you said, that nuance, that balance, it's so important to try to find that. And that's something I'm still working on.
Just want to say that therapy memes are some of my most favorite things in the world. Do anything about therapy. I love it. It's great. Let's do it more.
All of the therapy memes. The therapy memes are what get us all through life right now. I enjoy all of the good therapy jokes. I love all of the good mental health jokes and stuff that just makes it more ease. And I think it does make people feel more at ease when you're joking about it and connecting with it. I do feel like emotions, especially when it comes to mental health, is it just like us joking about our emotions, or is it like us trying to connect?
I think another thing about humor is that like I use it as a barometer for how I am accepting my health conditions. So if I'm going through something it's really really hard and I don't find myself able to be funny about it, I think that shows me how terrible I'm doing. Or if I finally get to a point where like I can be funny or tell a joke, I think it shows me like, okay, I'm healing a little bit. I'm accepting a little bit, which is always kind of good to like give myself a check-in because, sometimes it can be really hard to tell what you're doing. But I realize I crack a lot more jokes when I'm doing okay. When I'm in a real bad depressive episode or in so much pain I can't talk, probably not going to be as funny.
I think it is about taking that time to look back at how far you've come, and when you're able to like look back at a moment that might not have been as like great in the moment or really painful, and then being able to look back and find some like lightheartedness and humor in it, showing your growth and showing how you can kind of shift the mindset per se. Like for me, like I've dealt with anxiety for many years, and what kind of helped me take my power back and really gain more clarity in my mental health was shifting my perspective into this kind of third character mindset after a situation had happened and after I'd processed it, looking back and writing about it in a joking way of like, how do you survive this section of anxiety? How do you survive going to the grocery store and you run into this person? Like, player one, what do you do now? I think certain situations like in the moment feel very do or die, and then when you're like I think it's really great to be able to like look back and say I can now find some lightheartedness and humor and hopefully maybe help someone else relate to their condition better, or see that there's hope for the future within health and humor.
Wow, now I feel like I'm not cool if I don't narrate my health experience through a lens. That's very cool. I would totally listen to that or read that like graphic novel about Camara narrating her anxiety.
In the works.
I'm curious if there was ever a time when humor in your lives was used inappropriately when talking about your health, whether you've tried to be funny or whether someone else was being funny in a bad way.
Oh, for sure. I use sweaty humor, I call it, as a coping mechanism where I get so anxious that I'm like, okay, well, I just got to make people like me. And so I will be so self-deprecating that it actually like got me in trouble in high school, not just for being disruptive. I was always like, needs more verbal self-control. But it was also people like started to lose confidence in me because I didn't have any confidence in myself. But I thought I was being funny and I thought I was making friends by self-deprecating because I was like, yeah, we can all make fun of me. That's fine as long as we now have something in common. And it's only been in the past couple years where I'm like, oh, wait. That really destroyed my self-esteem. Like, I don't like trying to use myself, my experiences, my life, my appearance. I no longer want to use that as like the way to make friends. I've also, done that when joining like mental health support groups. Like I showed up, first day of partial hospitalization and I was like, depression, am I right? Like I was just I put up these walls, and I'm like, yeah, I'll use humor to like defend myself and not get vulnerable because like I always thought, nobody wants to hear that, or like I don't want to acknowledge how awful I'm truly feeling. But now I'm working on being more authentic.
I think that brings up the point is that like we don't all have to be funny, right? Some people's personalities are naturally witty, some aren't. I think when you force the humor or you feel like you have to make light of your situation, I think that's where I've had to balance. Like I feel like times in the past where I've forced myself, it's kind of like that choose happiness thing where I've like been doing real bad and I felt like, okay, if I just make light of this, like it'll be better for me, better for everyone. And it was like, no, I'm actually doing really bad right now. Like I don't have to to be funny, even if I normally am like love a good pun. So that's been a good lesson for me. What about you, Camera? Anytime you use it inappropriately?
Oh, definitely. I think there can get to be a point if you use humor, especially as a coping mechanism, where you just start keeping on joking. You're like, haha, oh, this is funny. It's like, oh, whoa, that's not funny. Why aren't you dealing like actually processing it? I think there is like that balance of sometimes it's okay to, even if you want to be the comedian or the funny person of the group or bring people in, sometimes you're not going to be in a space where you can use humor or you can feel all right. And you need to take that time for yourself and validate that, and also not give other people permission, like you were saying, Skye, like, oh, I'll just be the butt of the joke and then everyone will like me or will feel like they can do it too, because then they'll take your trigger and think they can make light of it and joke about it, and then you're like, whoa, and they're like, why? You joked about it the other time. You're like, well, you're taking an advantage of that. So it's like still having respect for yourself in that way.
So it's the modeling, right? So you have to be careful about what you're funny about. Because if you're funny, for instance, about suicidality, that can be okay. But if others start being funny about it in a way that can add to stigma, can be super, super harmful, that can make your suicidality worse, that's really tough. Like I remember I love stickers, for those that don't know. I especially love funny health stickers. And there was one that I found over the holidays and it said, thanks, it's the trauma. And like, I find it amazing. I would put that on a journal. But if someone says to me, oh, Kat, it's just your trauma talking, I might be a little bit like, you can't say that. No.
Any last tips that we want to give on humor? Any one-liners, quips that we want to say before we end off this episode? The humor feel good moment before we head off this table talk.
I'm trying to think if I have a final tip. I will just say, like, it's funny. One of the most popular things that we ever publish at the Mighty are meme roundups. And so I really recommend that, like, if you just need a moment of lightness or just kind of a moment to take yourself out of the experience, like, look for health memes. They're awesome. There's a lot of really good ones about bipolar and BPD. Like I said, therapy memes are really great. There's a lot of really good chronic pain ones as well. I think I saw one once and it was like an animal in a forest and it was wearing like an ice pack and a heating pad and it was like, everything's fine, everything's good. So yeah, look up some memes. 10 out of 10, recommend.
Speaking of like seeking out humor, I think one of the great things about social media and TikTok is you can find a lot of comedians now that you might not have been able to find before. Honestly, you can find ones with like your health condition or like a similar experience to what you're going through. Like I now follow so many comedians on TikTok with chronic illness and it's amazing because I feel seen and it's hilarious.
We love feeling seen and feeling hilarious. I think the main thing is finding ways to find the lighthearted moments and still being able to laugh, but while also validating what you're going through and making sure that you're holding yourself in that power. So thank you all for listening to this table talk today. If you want more conversations like this, subscribe to Mental Health Matters by going to bit.ly/MHinbox. That's bit.ly/MHINBOX. We'll see you in your inbox. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.